Hey, you've got pain in your shoulder. What's going on? How do I get rid of it? How long will it take to heal? These are the questions keeping you up at night. Now, you've tried to sort it yourself, but those short rehab videos haven't worked and you're still practicing with pain. Well, that's why I'm here with the full guide. Let's sort that injury. Hey everyone, I'm Coach Tom. Today we're fixing your shoulders. How? A comprehensive plan to strengthen the right places and in the right way. I'm going to provide you with everything you need, every stage, from when you first hit pain, right back to competing. But you need to know why you are doing something. The 5-minute rehab videos only give you 5% of what's needed. Without the complete plan, it's likely you'll hit a barrier, you won't know what to do, and the frustration will build. It may even send you back to square one or worse. I've been there. Let's make sure that doesn't happen to you. Let's start your journey back to breaking. The roadmap. So the steps we're going to run through. First comes the theory. What happens when you get injured? What's the shoulder injury itself and what's causing it? And how to navigate yourself out of pain. Then comes the practical plan, and with this plan, every step serves as the foundation for the next, all leading you back to dancing and pain-free. Now, a warning, most people want to skip to the practical, but without the theory, you'll likely do too much or too little, stay in pain, and feel even more helpless than before. But understanding both the theory and practical will enable you to make sense of your injury and make the right decisions to get back to dancing pain-free. So, let's get learning. So what happens when you get injured? The first thing I have to say is, because I know breakers and I was that guy, don't train through the pain. Obviously it's different if you have, say, Undisputed or BC1 coming up and you just have to enter that competition. But if it's a local jam or it's just a practice, then don't train through the pain. And why should you not train through the pain? Well, a little bit of a science lesson. When an area is injured and the brain senses pain, your brain then blocks some of the signals going to that area. This is so you can't produce as much force through that area and create more damage. It's like an inbuilt safety mechanism. The horrible thing is that because this area is not stimulated, it becomes weaker. Think about an astronaut in space. When you remove all stimuli on the muscles completely, as in zero gravity, the muscles just wither away. This is kind of what's happening at your injured area, because the brain is trying to protect the body from further harm. Additionally, when an area becomes weak, the muscles become tight to try and protect the area. As a result, it's difficult to use the muscles to their fullest capacity. These are autonomic nervous system functions. Your body does them automatically. You cannot control it. Like your heartbeat, goosebumps, digestion. You can't beast mode through this pain and weakness cycle. If you could, then you'd have the ability to turn your own heart off, which I can't recommend. If we keep training through the pain and hurting the area, then the injury's just going to get worse or stay weaker. And of course, the cycle continues. Funnily enough, in my practice, I'm caring less and less about what the injury actually is. Is it impingement? Is it a strain? Did you bash it? To be honest, the rehab is going to be pretty similar across everything. Can we move that shoulder without pain? Can we get it stronger? Fulfill these two things, and that is rehabilitation. Now, have you ever just woken up with a random injury? You see, there are two types of injury. One, you've been in a fall or you bashed it. Or two, chronic injuries. Usually no major incident happened and the pain just stayed around. These can come on slowly and seemingly out of nowhere. Or you injured it in practice, just practicing how you normally would, and it hasn't left. Now, chronic injuries can manifest in a single incident, but often there are underlying issues, and that last little bit of practice, or even that last bit of compensated movement, was just the straw that broke the camel's back rather than the incident itself. If there is weakness in your body, risk of injury is high. And if you're injured, your stabilizers are now weak. If you have done your injury in the last 24-48 hours and it's hot, inflamed, and you're immediately in pain, then see my video on the RICE protocol for some immediate relief. First, what I will say, and this is not a nice lesson to learn, but you'll have to realize that the way you fundamentally move through that shoulder will have to change from now on. The vast majority of the time, the cause of chronic and persistent injuries in the shoulder is linked to resting the weight through the shoulder joint and/or compensated movement. They usually come together. Now, the pain can manifest in different symptoms or areas, but I find that this resting through the shoulder joint and compensated movement are the root cause. For instance, this happens when the joint takes up some or all of the slack the stabilizing muscles should be doing. And also, that neck will come on. Now, flexibility can play a role in compensated movements, but if you go outside your true flexibility range, you can't engage the right stabilizing muscles. Thus, you can't keep yourself safe from injury. But this lack of flexibility is not directly a reason why you can't get out of pain. You just have to stay within your good engagement confines and become really aware of where your safe limits are. Though we do want to improve your confines. If you do struggle with your flexibility, then it's likely you are compensating in some end range movements, like overhead movements or stabbing in the side in a freeze. Ultimately, the result is the same. The lack of flexibility and awareness lead to resting through the joints and compensated movements, which results in pain and injury. Now, many of you have heard of impingement, but have you ever wondered what's actually causing it? When people bring their arm overhead, that upper trap works too much, and it closes the natural gap you have between your bony processes and shoulder joint. This is a functionally healthy moving joint. When the upper trap starts taking over, the shoulder raises and bones can start pinching on the joint. The joint can take a bit of short-term abuse, but eventually they will get aggravated. And once it goes, it never really is the same again. Do not fear. Again, to reassure you, this doesn't mean you cannot thrive. It may be just something you need to manage long-term. Every top athlete has an injury that they are managing right now. It's like de-weeding a garden. You have to take the weeds out occasionally, but you can still have a kick-ass garden. So whatever the injury in the shoulder, the solution is to engage the right stabilizing muscles so the joint doesn't get in pain. Then we strengthen and integrate those stabilizers. Problem may be different, but the solution is the same. However, that solution can be complicated to understand at first, which brings us on to the energy meter concept. So what's an energy meter got to do with injury rehab? The stabilizing muscles, when strong and recovered, protect the joint and area of injury from pain. When the stabilizers are weak and tired, the injured area will feel more vulnerable. This is because the stabilizers can't do the stabilizing. And if you are injured, I guarantee the stabilizers are weak, tired, or both. For instance, often after a set, my injured clients will say, it hurts now. Okay, no problem. Did it hurt at rep 1 or rep 10? Around 6. And it didn't hurt before? No. Okay, in that case, 6 is pretty much your limit. At that point, you have two choices. One, you can either brace pelvic floor harder, and you may be able to get 1 or 2 more reps out. This works, I'll get to that. Or 2, if that doesn't work, just rest. How is your shoulder now? Any better? Yeah. Okay, great. Let's go again for 6 reps. Any pain? No, all good. Though it feels on the cusp though. Okay, great. We gave it just the right amount then. Acting skills. You have to recognize that your injured shoulder will not be up to the same speed as everything else. The area will fatigue a lot sooner because it is injured, but it will build up again over the coming sessions. This is the image I have in my head. Imagine an energy bar for each body part. When you are injured, this will be you before your workout or practice, until you are healed. I got this idea from WWE SmackDown, innit? At the beginning of a set, your injury will feel a little better, as the shoulder stabilizers can do their job and protect the joint better. As you go through the set and your energy depletes, you are at risk of pain and discomfort. This will be a weird sensation, as chances are you will not actually feel tired over your whole body, but that injured area will be exhausted. When going through the reps of the exercises, we want to stop at the very latest when you start to feel pain. but preferably just before you start feeling pain. Before you hit pain, sometimes the area can feel vulnerable or you may feel something there, even if you can't register its pain straight away. Just like normal working out, you will most likely recover from each set of exercise within the workout, allowing you to do multiple sets. But energy is finite. It will eventually just tire for the day, and so you're done. Okay, but Tom, in session it was pain-free, but it hurt later on. Well, after a session, the same principle applies as when you're in the session. You have just put a lot of work through the stabilizers, so your injured area may feel a bit vulnerable after the workout and the next day. Often people can get worried at this stage. The pain is back, that's it. It hurts when I raise the arm. If you do experience pain, what I want you to do is completely unload the shoulder. Go rest on a bed, flat, for 5 minutes. Does it get pain-free when there's no movement and the shoulder is unloaded? If so, this just means the stabilizing muscles are exhausted. Remember, even lifting your arm against gravity is load. And if you have exhausted your shoulder massively, then to be honest, even standing will load your joint. Also, if you do feel vulnerable the next day, do not test the shoulder. Testing the shoulder will just deplete the little energy you have left to begin with and cause you pain and distress. Rest and unload it. Then see how your shoulder is doing with your workouts. When the stabilizers are tired, we need to take as much time off as we need to recover. You'll be surprised how long it may take to recover. But again, you cannot beast mode through this process. You cannot strengthen when there's no fuel in the tank. So you understand this energy meter concept, but what's the pattern to get out of this injury then? So for effective rehab, we want to hit a rhythm of training, which will deplete your energy, rest, which will restore your energy more than before, training, rest, training, rest, where all your lifts are objectively getting better and better in reps and in difficulty. And of course, the moves are pain-free. Now, to get this rhythm right, we want to get the dosage of exercise right. So it's like watering a plant. Too little water and nothing happens. Too much water and you drown the We need to expose the body to a stress just before we A, start to feel vulnerable or something in the shoulder, and B, definitely when we start feeling pain. Again, we need to understand the brain is trying to keep you alive, and often it can act like an overprotective parent. If we get this dosage right, the brain will recognize, okay, fine, maybe I overreacted. And next time, you will be allowed to do more. And next time, even more. Long term, the rehab may get rid of your injury completely, but often that threshold is waiting for you when you get tired. We want that added strength to raise that threshold, but we also need to use that discomfort as a sign you probably need to take some rest soon. Moving on. Movement matters everywhere. Now, this was a concept that really confused me. Now, have you ever wondered why you can do some strenuous exercises pain-free, but when you reach for a dish on the top shelf, your shoulder hurts?
When working out, most people think very consciously about how they move. But do you think they have that same level of attention in daily activities?
Well, your body does not care about where the force is coming from. Your technique matters everywhere until you get strong enough again that your base strength will let you cheat a little bit. Your body cannot distinguish between a weight in the gym and a stuck drawer. It knows force and that is it. If your stabilizing muscles are weak, then opening a stuck drawer with no conscious thought will hurt your shoulder. Even lifting your arm, just body weight, may be too much load for your shoulder when you are injured. There is still gravity acting on that arm. That is still load. Do your best to stay calm. You're just tired and you need to respect that your stabilizing muscles have fatigued and can no longer protect the joint. Think about your technique, rest up, strengthen later pain-free, and rest again, and you will be good and able to lift your arm again. Fatigue and its complications. Many people can get frustrated and not know why, even if they rest one day, the shoulder is still painful. It reminds me of a time my client said to me that they trained day on, day off, but when they took 2 days off, the injury was actually worse. Now, fatigue can be quite complicated to manage because there is a hormonal element to it as well. And fatigue can also accumulate over the days, weeks, months, and even years. And even outside of training factors can impact your energy. Have you ever experienced it or even heard of it? When you're working, then you finally get some holiday off and the first day you get sick. This is because a little bit of adrenaline and serotonin is being released every day, and this kind of masks everything. So, should you carry on through it then? Well, you have to remember that fatigue is building up in the background. If you don't get that rest, it will come up eventually. Okay, so how the hell do I deal with it then? This sounds hella confusing. Well, essentially, you rest when you need to. If you feel pain much earlier than the workout before, or you just cannot hit the reps anywhere near the workout when you're fresh, take an extra day off. The reason why that energy bar is low, I couldn't tell you. I don't know your life or what you have been or have not been doing. But the facts are the energy meter is low. Respect it, let the energy bar go up again, and keep pushing. Now you understand the theory, let's go through the practical plan. Step 1. Rest. So we touched on it a little bit already, but why is rest important? Because how can we strengthen something that's exhausted? As mentioned, 90% of your body will not feel tired, as most of your body will be rested. But that injured area will most likely be exhausted to begin with. You'll probably need some days off up to a week initially before you start any rehab. This will allow the stabilizers to recover and allow that energy bar to go up. Now, many of you will be in denial about your situation. You also try to test your injury too early or throughout the day, which is normal at first. But again, if that area is tired, the stabilizers cannot do their thing. So stop testing if you feel pain. Rest. Those in denial will also still try to do this rehabilitation alongside their normal practice. I can see your inner monologue. If I add this in, it will get rid of it. Honestly, it's likely it won't. Your stabilizers are weak, which is why you have that pain or discomfort in the first place. Your stabilizers are also desperately working at practice and during other strengthening exercises. You only have a finite amount of energy, so you need to allocate it towards getting over your injury. Now, some of you may technically be able to train and do rehab at the same time, but please, your training's gotta be scaled back. But I found that people that attempt this usually get it wrong. It's like, I'm gonna go light today. It hurts, I barely used it. Again, think of this energy bar concept. Even using it a bit may be too much for it. You can train other things, but then it's a judgment call, because even one-arm movements or barrel mills will eat into your energy, especially when things are dynamic. The exercises can ramp up in difficulty from 0 to 100 in the blink of an eye and cause pain again. Thus, your situation continues. There's no judgment here. I did this and so did everyone around me. It's human nature. If you have an event coming up and it cannot be missed, I will put out a video on this. But even then, you'll still have to scale the training back. You need to let that energy bar go up. And this entire rehab journey is waiting for you to do soon. So, how long do you rest for? A minimum of 3 days off, up to a week. This is because we want that energy bar to go up even a little bit. We also want to see where your base strength is actually at and not be thrown off by any lingering fatigue. 3 days off is not going to harm your progress. Honestly, for some, it may even get rid of your injury. And if the rest is overkill, then you'll probably progress through the rehabilitation phases faster. But it has to be a restful 3 days, not a 3 days drugs and booze bender. I know you have to get back to practice as soon as possible, but if you don't have the fuel in the tank to strengthen, you just don't. It's like expecting a car to move with no gas in it. Moving on. Step 2, massage. Weirdly, this is important for speeding up recovery, but essentially can be left, as it's the strength that will get you back to where you want to be. However, honestly, for a few, massage and rest may be all some need to get rid of that injury, as it will give time for the already strong stabilizers to recover and protect the area. But I found this is often not the case. Most will need the other stages to deal with that injury once and for all. But if you rest but keep re-injuring the area, then definitely watch the later stages. As I explained earlier, the muscle becomes weak and tight when it's injured. If we just massage, it's not going to magically zap strength into the area, so it's not going to produce any long-term improvement. Imagine if I could zap strength into people. I'd be a billionaire. I think I'd be doing this. Now, listen. A strong, rested, stabilizing muscle will never be tight. But when the muscles are tight, the massage will help speed up recovery. What it does is provide a momentary window where we can strengthen the muscles more effectively by increasing the range of motion and allowing the stabilizers to contract better because they're not tight. The massage will also enable the muscles to support the joint a little and so reduce pain, thus giving an outward appearance of increased strength. It will also reduce pain a little by reducing the tension on the injured area. That's why massaging where the pain is often the worst strategy. That's where it's inflamed. Massage around, but not on. Now, a big confusion is the concept of tightness itself. A muscle can be short and tight, which is usually your big powerful muscles like your pec, lat or bicep, or you can have a long and tight muscle. Muscles like the rhomboids, lower back, or rotator cuff. Muscles work in pairs. As one muscle contracts, another must relax. Now it does get more complicated than that, but let's take the pec muscles and the rhomboids as an example, as this is very common in people. People often complain about tightness here. They want to massage here, but just loosening the rhomboids would not always be a great idea. Here's why. Imagine you have no pain and perfect posture. Everything is in balance. But the pecs get tight. Let's see what happens. You can see that one area becomes short and tight, the other becomes long and tight. You will feel the discomfort in the stretched area, but not the short. What we want to do is strengthen where it's long and stretch where it's short. It's for these reasons just outlined why I've chosen what to massage. So to loosen the shoulder, we're going to massage the pec, the lat, and the rotator cuff, as I guarantee they will all be tight. As mentioned before, when an area becomes injured, it becomes weak. When it's weak, the bigger muscles around the area can also become tight to try and pick up the slack of the stability muscles. This is why we need to loosen them, because if the large muscles are tight, they can take over the movement a little, make it harder to engage the right muscles, and restrict full range of motion. They can also act like a brake against your movement. So all we need to do is 1 to 2 minutes on the pec, 1 to 2 minutes on the lat, and 1 to 2 minutes on the rotator cuff. With the pec for males, massage from the middle up to the shoulder. Do not massage past this point, as there is little muscle here and it will probably just irritate the joint. For females, obviously you can only access above the breast tissue. What I use for the chest is a circular massage ball or medicine ball. Lat. The best thing to do is massage the belly of the muscle, here. With the lat, do not go over the region where the armpit hair is. Again, as this is where the joint is, and there is little muscle here, so it will likely aggravate the joint. For the lat, you can use the circular one again, but the cylindrical massage roller is better. Rotator cuff. You should be able to feel a little divot just behind your shoulder. That's the best site to massage your rotator cuff. The external rotators do this action, and you can see the muscles actually span out here. But from experience, I've really seen little gain for massaging apart from this site. For the rotator cuff, I use a lacrosse ball, however, you can use anything round to get in there, but it needs to have a bit of density. It can't be too spongy. You can even use a baseball or cricket ball, but just put something over the top to soften it a little. For all areas, we do not want to massage past 1 or 2 minutes, as too much can actually tighten the area again, as the body is trying to protect itself. Also, massaging deep can be good, but just be wary before exercise. The deeper you go, the more you'll have to warm up afterwards. You see, there are also 2 types of pain when massaging: injury pain and relieving pain. Injury pain will feel sharp and like you're aggravating the injury. Relieving pain, like over a knot, will be painful but good, and will be more on the dull side. That's what we're aiming for. When massaging, you want to move and find a spot that feels like that good relieving pain. Stay there, let it subside, then move on to another area. Stretching the chest and lat muscles will also allow for even more mobility, but that should be in any warm-up before exercise. However, if the stretch hurts, just leave it for now. So how long should I do this massage for? If your shoulder's inflamed, give it 1 day before doing anything, as we do not want to mess about and inflame it more. Otherwise, massage can be done on day 1 with rest. Do massage every other day, and do no more than 1 to 2 minutes a body part, and ensure it's not injury painful. So steps 1 and 2 together should last between 1 to 7 days. The massage should also be done before every bout of exercise, until you don't need it anymore. But if it hurts, just leave it. The strength is where you need to be. Which leads us on to the next step. Step 3, awareness and low-level strength. After at least the initial 3 days minimum rest, we can start strengthening. This is how we get over your injury. This will all be quite difficult to learn. You will have to zone in and become much more aware of how you are moving. This will also be quite mentally taxing as well, so don't be surprised that you are mentally tired after doing this. You are learning brand new skills. Right, first things first. If you've managed to get back to training after injury, but your exercises are still painful, you've already made them easier, and you've rested enough but still no luck, well, there's clearly something missing. Pelvic floor is that missing piece of the puzzle. It is the essential secret weapon of injury rehab and prevention. It engages the right stabilizing muscles, and for me, for my injured athletes, was the game changer that allowed us to return to braking without pain. Ignore pelvic floor in your workouts and dance, and you'll leave yourself open to injury again, or delay recovery. You see, the pelvic floor are a group of muscles deep within the hip that you brace. They stabilize the hips. It's a weird brace. It's like you're holding a poo and a pee. Yeah, I know. I wouldn't be teaching it if it didn't work. It's used in Pilates. You see, your hips are very connected to the rest of your body. The glutes connect to the lat, which helps keep the shoulder down and in the socket. If your hips are not activated and stable, it can and will impact your shoulder. It's a complex topic. To learn how to use and integrate them properly, you'll have to watch the pelvic floor tutorial. Don't worry if you don't get it first time. Keep practicing. Some get it faster than others, but all learn it. I know many will ignore the pelvic floor and get frustrated with learning it. But if you do ignore it and tackle everything I say from now on and still no luck, then please reconsider and learn pelvic floor. Moving on. So, rotator cuff. Again, this should all be pain-free. If it's not, we need to make it easier, or concentrate on engaging the right muscles more. Or rest. So why are we doing this? Because these are the stabilizing muscles that have probably been impacted the most by the injury. Strengthening these is the first step, as it will allow us to integrate the rotator cuff strength into bigger and bigger movements in the next phases. First exercise is the external rotator cuff. The external rotator cuff is the base for pulling. Many of you will be fairly familiar with this. However, many still get it wrong. We want to ensure the upper neck is turned off. Shrug the shoulder down, pelvic floor on, feel it in this area. Put your other hand over your neck to ensure it's soft. If the upper neck works all the time, it can reduce the gap between your shoulder joint and bones. And so the risk of impingement, and thus pain, is massively heightened. The neck will work in other movements, but we want to turn it off as much as possible. And that goes for everything. Push-ups, flares, pull-ups, everything. Now, better technique and engaging the right stabilizing muscles will help turn off the neck, and will make all the exercises that follow much more difficult, both physically and mentally. But it will make it more safe, and target exactly the right muscles we need. No more compensation. Next exercise is the internal rotator cuff. Similar stance, but we're going in this time. Ensure you have your shoulder down and pelvic floors on. And you're feeling it in this area, under the armpit. If not, make it lighter. This internal rotator cuff muscle is an important muscle to become aware of, because it's the base from which we need to push from. In push-ups, overhead movements, and bigger movements like flares and power. After the initial few days of rest and massage, perform your warm-up, then aim for 2 sets a day for 15 to 20 reps. If you can do more than 20, make it harder. Later we will reduce the reps, but we want it high rep to begin with, because it will get blood into the area and immediately make the shoulder feel better, reduce pain, and allow you to progress faster. But the high reps are just for the initial phases of the injury, As you progress more, it will be better to do slightly lower reps and challenge the strength more. But I will tell you when to reduce. Do not do more sets and reps than I've outlined. Remember, your energy bar is low at this point. You may be able to do more, but I would save your energy for the real strengthening exercises in the next stages. The rotator cuff is small enough to be done pretty much 6 days a week, or 7 days if you only do one set. But be mindful, if you could say do 10 no pain the day before, but then only 5 before you hit pain the next day, give it a day's rest. There's no shame in it. You just need to rest and go back to it later. Also, don't be alarmed if the area feels more fragile after exercise or the next day. You've just exhausted the stabilizers more. But it will get stronger again once it's rested and the energy bar has gone up. So fight that urge to test it and don't exhaust the energy you have. Before you incorporate the bigger strength movements, do the rotator cuff for 2 to 5 days, up to a week. The rest and foundation from those exercises will speed your recovery. However, there are some benchmarks we can aim for. If you can do these, then you can skip to the next phase. But I cannot stress enough, you should not be battling through any kind of pain. That goes from now until forever. You can feel it on the very last rep, but that's it, but preferably not at all. Though I would try and achieve the benchmarks before moving on to the next steps, rather than just following the time I've set out, as you may not have enough strength to move on just yet. The low-level strength is always your foundation. If you struggle with the later stages of rehab, take a couple of days off and build up from step 3 again. If you're struggling to improve, it's likely you're not giving your body enough time to let that energy bar go up. You may need day on, day off if you're not improving. If you get a flare-up, as in you slip, jolt your arm and it hurts the area again, give it rest, but you may need to start the steps again. That slip would have loaded the area and weakened it either temporarily or re-injured the area. Regardless, the energy bar is low again. Again, with proper rest for light injuries, this may be all you need to get over that initial pain. However, we want the injury to be managed forever, which is why we move on to the 4th step, high-level strengthening. Now we're getting on to the real injury rehab. For many of you, the rotator cuff will get you so far, but it will not get you back to breaking, which is why we need to strengthen further. There will be a steep learning curve on these exercises, as 99% of people get them wrong. Many will get frustrated, but do your best. It is a skill. Everyone learns at different rates, but all do learn it. You will adapt, get stronger, and eventually feel better and better, as long as we catch the right rhythm that I mentioned earlier in the video. First exercise is a scapula pull. This is to train the shoulder retractors and bring vital body awareness to the area. This is kind of like a row or a pull-up, but with just your shoulders. It's a very small but important movement. Why are we doing this? Because we want the muscles to take the strain of the weight, not the joints. Again, joints can take a bit of abuse, but will grumble eventually. So for this, we're going to train the muscles that help bring that shoulder back into its socket. Now, your shoulder likes being in its socket. That's where it's safe, away from injury, and stable. This scapular pull will strengthen that position. This will help strengthen all of your moves, as it creates a stronger foundation for your bigger movements to act against. Push-ups, pull-ups, flares, and it's something we will continually build. For a proper explanation, please see the scapular pull video, but I will give a brief outline on some important points before I move on. By the way, if you're not watching these exercise tutorials, you'll most likely do all the exercises wrong. For the scapular pull, again, we ensure the neck is turned off, so shrug down. Feel it in this area. Same principles apply for the horizontal pull. Also, only go to your first barrier that you feel. It's not a huge movement. There are 3 stages to the scapular pull: on and at the top, on and lengthened, and off. Never be off. Off is resting through the joint. We need to regress it to pain-free levels. You may be surprised how easy you need to make it. Again, 1 or 2 sets for 8 to 15 reps. Stop before you get to pain. This needs to be pain-free. If you can do 15 reps, make it harder. Now we want to take what we learn in a scapular pull and put it into a bent arm pull. Pull-ups. So why are they important? They create balance. When you do something dynamic like a push or a throw, you use your big powerful muscles on the front. When you have done the dynamic movement, the stabilizing muscles on the back work really hard to decelerate the shoulder. Otherwise, your shoulder would dislocate each and every time. If you're pulling muscles a week, two things will happen. One, your brain will not allow you to push or throw to your maximum power because it thinks you'll injure yourself. Or two, your shoulder actually gets injured. Pulling strength allows us full access to our pushing power. This is why we want it. I guarantee you'll need to scale the exercise right back and then build up the reps. But please see my video on pull-ups for a full explanation and how to make it easier or harder. Otherwise, you'll probably go too hard and hurt yourself. Alternatively, you can do rows. So for the pull-up, the shoulder likes being in its socket. That's where it's safe, strong, and away from the bony parts around the shoulder. So, one scapular pull and keep it there, and pull. And ensure the scapular pull is there on the way down as well. Shoulder in socket. I would only do the pulling exercises for the first workout of these, just to ensure you grasp the concepts. So how does the workout look now? You may be able to do more, but think energy bar. Is it low? This will all be a lot to learn and to do right. Now you're doing more strenuous exercises, day on, day off is the maximum I want you to do. Doing back-to-back days will either harm you or stunt your rate of recovery. So once we have done that workout, the next workout we will add in pushing and awareness around pushing, using the scapular push. Just like the scapular pulls, we want to strengthen our foundations. Why are we doing this? Because we want the muscles to take the strain of the weight, not the joints. Pushing strength is also so vital to the dance. It forms most of what we do. You can see this is where the muscles are taking the weight. This is when we're hanging off our joints. Most people do the last in push-ups. The scapular push is like a push-up, but with straight, not locked out elbows. Get into a push-up position. Round that lower back, preferably through pelvic floor, and control your shoulders' descent down. Then push your shoulders away from you until you hit your first barrier. We want to feel like we are pushing from the nice base of the internal rotator cuff, under the armpit. This is a weird concept, but we do not actually want to feel the front of the shoulder or chest working. I guarantee they will be working, they have to, but we do not want to feel them working. From experience, if you feel this under the armpit area working and working enough, it's a sign that you are good and putting the weight through the muscles instead of resting through the joints. The scapular push can be confusing for some, but practice and just think, am I resting through my joints? We want the muscles to ensure we're not sagging. Make it light and keep practicing. Look, you didn't get some footwork clean on the first try, right? 1 or 2 sets of 8 to 15 before your workout should be enough. Next exercise is a bent arm push or a push-up. You will need to regress these a lot. We need them pain-free. The fact that knee push-ups are called girl push-ups is just an annoying thing I need to get people over. 99% of people do push-ups wrong. They hang off their lower back. Do not use their core. Rely too heavily on their shoulder joints. And do not engage from the internal rotator cuff muscle here. So essentially for a push-up, we do a scapular push and then we lower. And we keep that scapular push on throughout. But we make sure that lower back is rounded, preferably through pelvic floor engagement. But please watch my video for a full explanation on the push-up and how to make it easier or harder. So sets and reps, 3 to 5 sets of 5 to 10 push-ups should be enough. If you can do 10, make it harder. We're going to build you to the point where you can do 3 to 5 bodyweight on knee push-ups, and that's push-ups with my method, not the dumbass back-arching bullshit push-ups I used to do. Do not let that technique slip even a little bit. I like teaching the push-up before the pike push-up, just so you can feel it in the right area of the shoulder. Overhead movements are very tricky when you're in shoulder pain. We want to feel the internal rotator cuff muscle here when we're moving that shoulder overhead. Then we know the base of the stabilizers is on. Otherwise, when we move that arm overhead, that neck will come on and raise the risk of pain and impingement. The pike push-ups are easier to do technique-wise, but harder physically. So move on to those once you are comfortable with the normal push-up. So this is the full workout. Warm up first, then tackle this. Now you can do some hip or lower body exercises afterwards, but that shoulder pain is your guide. I wouldn't add in the lower body for the first week, because if you add in the other exercises straight away and you feel pain, you don't know what's causing that pain and what you need to work on and leave out. Day on, day off is the maximum I want you to do. you need that bloody rest. It will take a good 48 hours to actually see the benefit and move forward. If your numbers are not steadily going up, then take an extra day's rest before the next workout. And that's rest, not practice. It's sometimes difficult to know when your injured area is tired. I will create a video on this, but essentially it involves what I've called low-level tests. These will inform how your injury and body are doing before the workout and during. I recommend either the external rotator cuff or push-ups with my method. If you can normally do 10 at a certain resistance and it starts feeling vulnerable or tired at say 6 or 7 reps, then you know that area is fatigued. You may have to scale your training back that day, or if it's even lower, leave training altogether. This test can be done before or during your workout. If it hurts in a smaller movement, it will probably hurt in something more strenuous, or at the very least will be a gamble with your injury. Even without the test, it's that feeling of vulnerability in your shoulder that will be your guide. If you're going through the workouts and your shoulder starts hurting and you cannot rectify it with pelvic floor or proper engagement, the shoulder is fatigued and you have to stop. This could be your very first set or movement of the day or halfway through, so be prepared to stop or leave at any point. I'm very aware that this is unbelievably difficult to do. It takes a hell of a lot of discipline, especially when you are motivated. But again, if you don't have the fuel in the tank, you have to rest and recharge it up. Recovery is not linear, and outside factors can impact your energy. Did you have a long day at work? Bad night's sleep the day before? For females at the end of your menstrual cycle? Personal life stresses? You get the picture. These can all factor into your recovery and energy. Whatever it is, don't be alarmed. Get the pain-free work in, keep the day-on, day-off pattern, be patient, disciplined, and give your body the rest it needs, and you will get better. Side note, if you're still having some problems with overhead movements, then I will put out a video on this, as there is a technique to it, but honestly, most of the time I find with the principles you learn from the pull-up or push-up, you usually don't need this video. But just in case some of you are struggling, I have you covered. At the same time, do not skip to this. Your push-ups should be pain-free first. How long in this phase? This stage will unfortunately take as long as it needs to. But I think if you catch the rhythm right, you will not be completely removed from practice for more than 1 or at the very latest 2 months. The other thing to mention is a concept which is called the deload week. Every 4th week you reduce the sets by half or take the week off so that you can rest and recover. Fatigue can and will accumulate over the weeks. I will go over this in another video, but just know all professional athletes are taking these deload weeks. This is to maintain consistency over the whole year. So, the benchmarks. When you can do 4 knee push-ups, and that's with my method, and you can turtle both sides pain-free for 30 seconds, then we move on to the 5th step. We incorporate some braking back in. The 5th step, return to the dance. So the process of getting back to full practice and competing will unfortunately take as long as it needs to. I don't envy you. You are in a horrible and frustrating place at the moment. This is why I'm giving you this whole roadmap, so you're in this position as little as possible. But we need to respect our body. It will strengthen at the rate it can do. You can sow the seeds that are your workouts, but you can only do so much to get the garden to grow. Sowing more seeds or watering even more will only do so much, or even make things worse. Eventually, nature has to take its course. So why are we doing this step? Because, quite frankly, you need to be strengthened in the moves that you want to do, and do them pain-free. If we don't get back to braking, honestly, what the hell is the point? Again, you also have to remember that all the pain-free movement and methods of pushing that you've learned need to be integrated into how you push in braking. If you switch back to your old habits, you'll probably be resting through your joint again and likely re-injure yourself. Every step feeds into the next. Now, this phase is where another lot of discipline will need to come in. Again, you have to recognize the injured shoulder, while much better, will not be up to the same speed as everything else, but it will build up again over the coming sessions. You'll need to scale some things back. So let's test the waters. If it feels good and you can do those 4 bodyweight knee push-ups, start your practice with footwork. If that's pain-free, move on to a less taxing power move. And if you manage to do that pain-free, then maybe you can train something that's more taxing. If you can't progress with the more difficult movements, then just do more and more what you can do. Build up the volume until you can attempt the more difficult moves. This will still progress you. However, your energy will deplete, and that injured area will be done way before everything else. Again, you can use the low-level tests like rotator cuff or maybe a single push-up within your practice to see how your body is feeling before you leap into something like flares. Now, once that arm is exhausted, you can do some things like one-arm stabs or strengthening with the uninjured limbs, but your shoulder is still being used in things like no-handed mills, and it will still be depleted even in other arm movements, but just at a much lower rate. And when it is exhausted, don't just go light on the injured area. Use your discipline and rest when you need to. But at the same time, do try strengthening everything else. You can still make gains. In fact, if you can train more, then you absolutely must. This is a competitive art form. You can always make improvements elsewhere. But if you feel that pain or vulnerability, stop, rest a couple of days, and go back harder. And so over time, if you do this well, your energy bar for the injured area will continue to increase. So in terms of actual practice, what would it look like? So, for example, say before you were injured, you could do, say, 10 rounds of halos. You may be only able to do 1 or 2 when you get back to this phase of rehab. But over the next weeks, this will build from 2 to 4 to 7 to 9 to 10, as long as it's pain-free and you are resting enough. In the practice itself, sets and reps become a little bit more complicated to manage. How much you should do will depend on how well you had a power move to begin with. If you could do less than 10 rounds, then I would do no more than 5 sets to begin with. If you're eventually able to do those 5 sets and you still feel good, again, pain and vulnerability are your guide for when you need to stop practicing. Personally, I always treated the beginning sessions like a workout until I got my power to similar numbers like I was doing before. That then told me I was back at full strength and I could practice as normal, but with new heightened awareness of my body. Every injury was a learning opportunity. If you don't have any power, then again, pain and vulnerability are your guide for when you need to stop. So once back at practice, how does the program look? You should practice or strengthen and then take the day off. Continue this pattern until you're training with the same intensity you used to. If we get the dosage right, then you should know when you can practice as normal. But at this point, do not be fearful. The foundation of strength you've built up will not go away so easily. If you get a flare-up, just take a few days off, up to a week, and you'll notice that your strength all comes flooding back, and pain will rapidly subside. You are just exhausted. You are not back at square one, unless you really let yourself go. Once you rest, the energy bar will go back up quickly. If you need to rehab again, you will spend a much shorter time in the roadmap I've set out, probably a week or 2 at most. But if you really let yourself go, the roadmap will take as long as it takes. If you want to do strengthening and practice in the same day, it can be done, but then it becomes more complicated. Just be wary of the energy bar analogy I've given. You don't want to deplete your energy before practice. Look in the program for the alternative plan. And there you go, you're back at practice, and your old problems like, how do I move my arm without pain, have turned into, how do I make this move better? What does that transition need? But how do we handle the injury long term? We want to ensure we don't get into the bad position we were in before. How to handle the injury long term. Why? Because honestly, the injury may never fully go away, but it doesn't mean you are broken and can't push even harder than before. It just means if you're exhausted, that injury will rear its ugly head again. I want you to include the rotator cuff, scapular pulls, and scapular pushes into your workouts and practices from now on. Just 1 or 2 sets of each in your warm-up. This will provide a tool to see how your body is feeling that day. If it feels super easy one day, go hard. If it feels a bit tired the next, go easy. It's better to test the waters with this light, controlled stuff than find out how you're doing in flares or power. These prehab warm-up exercises will help you catch injuries early. If you see the numbers continually much lower than you normally can do, then you know a deload week or rest week is in store for you very soon. This is also the same with your pull-up exercises as well. Long-term, the prehab exercises will continually strengthen your stabilizers, and with the pulling exercises will help you stay as safe as possible. If your injury flares up again, then I want you to run through the protocol I've outlined in this video. Steps 1 to 5. It will be much shorter this time around. This is super frustrating again, but let the mental pain subside, then reflect. There's always a lesson to be learned. Whenever I delve deep with a client, there's always a habit or technique that's letting them down. Explore what may have happened, learn, and build even better the next time. I will put out more information on this, but when dealing with high-intensity moves, be wary of how taxing on the body moves where you can only do 1 or 2 rounds. Doing more than 8 attempts in a practice of these will massively fatigue you, and the fatigue can linger longer than a few days. The energy meter concept is sound. That's always the case. It can be complicated, but navigating around that principle will always be your best bet. Rest and then strengthen. Anyways, that was the shoulder video. Thank you so much for sticking with me. If you found this useful, please like, subscribe and share with a friend. It really helps the channel grow and allows me to put out more videos on different injuries and how to strengthen you in the best way. Also, please give feedback below. Ask any questions. Let me know what wasn't clear for you, as I'm aware this is all new information and it will ultimately make my message even better. And lastly, let me know what pain you're struggling with and what injury you would like me to cover next in the comments below. Otherwise, until next time, train hard and stay safe.